Winter riding is really interesting because you can ride the same trail 100 times in a row, and depending on the weather, you just don't know what you're going to get. One day it could be a nice powdery snow that just grips really well, and the next it could just be an icy mess. And that's why some people choose studded tires and some choose to run just regular fat tires. In this video, we're going to talk about my experience with both unstudded and studded tires. So let's get into it. So the two tires that I have here, just for comparison, these are the 27.5 by 4.3 Terrain Yippee-Ki-Yays. Really good tire. I love these for dirt as well as snow. And then these right here are the WTB Bailiffs in a 27.5 by 4.5, so a little bit bigger. And they are studded, as you can see here. This is also a pretty good tire. Surprisingly, it's much faster rolling than the Yippee-Ki-Yay. But I think in general, they have a pretty similar vibe. So it's a little bit more of an apples to apples comparison despite being different tires. And the main difference is gonna be the studs. Now for years, I never rode studded tires. I was always on just a regular old fat bike tire. A lot of different sizes, but never studs. What was interesting is I found I didn't really think I needed them. And I think for a lot of people, that actually is probably going to be the case, except for some scenarios. So unstudded tires, or just normal tires, I guess you'd call them, they do great at snow. So the middle of winter, when you're consistently getting snow, maybe you also ride groomed trails, you don't need studs for that. There's a lot more options in ones that aren't studded, and they're significantly cheaper. So anything that is powder or maybe gently packed snow or groomed, and then also on dirt, you also don't need studs there. So as a general purpose tire, I don't think studs are necessary, especially if those are just, that's what you ride. Studs really come into play on ice. And so when I did get these right here, what I found is they opened up a few riding areas for me that I hadn't been able to ride because it got so icy. Some of those were due to just like the orientation of the trails. They got a lot of sun exposure even in the dead of winter, and it would create some ice. Some of it was also due to the types of other traffic that those trails saw. So if you're riding a lot of multi-use trails where whether it's people or horses or vehicles, it's packed, which is great, but also you get crazy ridges and little like post holes basically that are hard as rock. Studs help out there a ton. I also found that studded tires were great for the later shoulder season. So in spring, when there's a lot of freeze thaw cycles, and again, you end up with a lot of ice, studs made it so that I could ride those trails and I didn't have to just stick to really low elevation where it was fully dirt. This made it so I could ride all the time. There were a couple places too where I've come across it's basically natural springs that are flowing, or sometimes it's creeks that end up with an ice dam, and they back up and they form basically like a mini pond that's just frozen. You can ride across it with studs. You can try on normal fat bike tires, and you'll probably make it if you go real slow and you keep your power really consistent. But with studs, you don't really have to worry about that. You're probably not going to slip, and it just makes riding on ice so much more enjoyable. I also think studded tires are great for those of you who might be commuting in a town or a city where there's snow on the sidewalks, on the road, and it gets compacted by cars or whoever else. Highly recommend studded tires for that. In Montana, they don't use salt on anything. They use like a little bit, I think, in their mixture of what they throw down on the road, but it's mostly sand and dirt and little rocks and stuff. And so you end up with a lot of ice, which you don't really notice in a car as much, but on a bike, it's very noticeable, especially because you're usually riding like on the shoulders. And so I run studs on a smaller tire for when I want to go ride around town. So I've kind of come to the conclusion on my setup, given where I live, the way the snow comes, the way the weather is, I run unstudded tires the majority of the year. Basically, probably April through, or late April through end of January, mid February, unstudded. That's because it's either dirt or just there's enough snow that I don't really need anything else. I don't need the studs. That mid February to mid April time is some of the hardest because we get crazy wild swings in temperatures. It can be -40 or it can be 50 outside. You just don't know what you're going to get. And so the trails end up that way too. In the past, that's meant that I have really backed off on my riding during that time of year because there's just not as much open, or I end up maybe riding a lot more gravel and pavement. The studded tires allowed me to hit some of these areas that still have snow, but also have a ton of ice, and I could still get out there and fat bike or mountain bike. So it's really helpful. Anyway, that's all I've really got for you. Let me know what you think about studded tires down in the comments and what your experience has been with them. Do you use them? Do you find them useful if you have tried them? But yeah, that's all I've got. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.